So is Street Racer. Like, how did that even start?
Yeah, so no, Australia's Best Street Racer YouTube series we made. It started because me and my mate Mike, we grew up together and we make stuff together. And it started as very much just like having this passion to want to make things, tell stories, be funny, do stupid stuff. And anyway, growing up in a place like Launceston, we were just so familiar with that blocky root culture and not even realizing that it's just like a thing all around the world and like in every country, like Australia has it everywhere. So yeah, we just like one night we were in a habit of just going, let's make more stuff. And we just did this like improvised little sketch and then put it on Facebook and it did really, really well. And we were like, oh, there's actually like something kind of in this. And it was just around that point where we started kind of dipping our toe in the water a little bit more from like, just, you know, kind of having a laugh and enjoying it to kind of going, oh, could we make something of this as a career or a life or whatever? And we kind of got teamed up with Screen Tasmania, who fund all the kind of TV shows and stuff that happen here in Tassie. And they had this initiative thing and they're like, we want comedy ideas. And we were like, well, what about Street Racer? And then from there, it got up and we made it. We made the series, you know, got 2.5 million views, heaps of other stuff. We've sold it to the States as like an idea. So there might be an American Street Racer at some point. It's just like a crazy idea when then like at its heart, it was just like two guys growing up in Lonnie going, man, blockies are pretty funny.
2, 1.
Here we go.
Oh, what a great way to start, mate. Dylan, thank you for coming on the podcast. Let's get into your 1%er, mate. What's your small piece of advice you'd give others to be that little bit better every day?
Yeah, I was really thinking about this and I feel like for me, a lot of stuff is always about in relationship to other people. Like for me, that's a really big area where I've really tried to grow. Like I've been married for almost 10 years now and I work really closely with Mike, my best mate. And so you're constantly in close relationship with people. And so I'm really always quite passionate about like, how do you grow in your relationship with other people? And when I was thinking about this, probably the one that probably impacted me the most, which is always assume that everyone's doing their best. And for me, that was like a really big takeaway because I'm like a kind of type A personality. I don't know about you guys, but like that means I love to be like, let's get it, like let's do it, let's put in the hard work. And I can easily then be a bit of a control freak if you ask my wife. And I can easily be like, "What? Come on, how's this going?" But to kind of have that as a mental reset for me has actually been really massive to kind of always enter a conversation thinking that and also to kind of then orientate my own mind to be like, hey, Dylan, you don't always have the best idea in the room. You're not always the smartest or the most creative or, yeah, I guess to kind of try to kind of practice humility more proactively, which I think is, you know, pretty helpful when you work in the entertainment industry as well. So, yeah, that's one that really came to mind for me.
It'd just be general around the home, being able to go, oh, no, everyone is doing their best. Everyone's having a crack here. And even at work, and I suppose if you're probably not so much for you, not a 9-to-5 sort of job, but, you know, for, I suppose, more so for you, Murphy, going to work, you see, oh, he's probably just trying his best. I don't think it's good enough, but he's trying his best. He's getting there. Like,
feel that.
Yeah. And that's always the hard part because I feel in your mind, you can be in so many situations with friends and family or people in your life. And it's always those who you are closest to that just annoy the shit out of you, right? And you're just always going, oh, what were they thinking with this? What were they and you get so in your head, sometimes you just kind of, for me, it's been a great reset to just go, nah, look, they're probably just doing their best and that's okay, even when it doesn't feel like it is. But
and even recognising that you haven't always got your best going forward either. That's the big one, yeah.
Definitely.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that. I think it was probably either something I heard in a podcast or something like I go to church, my pastor would have said, usually if there's something smart in my life, I'm like, it's usually too smart for me. Usually I've heard it from someone else. Because I remember it was definitely about that. And around that time, I was really learning a lot about the expectations that we have of each other. Because I think for me, that was really one of those big ways I've grown in having stronger relationships with people. And then kind of the practice of how you treat other people is kind of how you treat yourself as well. Like sometimes it's really actually positive for me to go, oh, actually I'm doing my best and that's okay. Because as that kind of type A personality, you can really be like, oh, it's not good enough. Got to keep going. It's got to be great. like, I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but like if I'm not doing things well, I don't really want to do it. Like I want it to be the best joke or the best idea, the best relationship, things like that. So it's really helpful to actually stop and go, oh, actually, like I've done my best, and that's so fine. I think I'm a dad now. I've got a 2-year-old at home, and we've got another one coming soon, which is pretty exciting. But it's pretty helpful in that kind of season of life as well to actually be like, you know, because you're trying to do everything, aren't you? Like, so I know you've got a kid, Aaron. Have you guys got kids too?
2's easier than 1, definitely. I heard 3 is easier than 2.
We'll
Okay.
see. Give me a few months.
Okay, you're on the way for 3.
Yeah.
yeah,
He's not,
heck yeah. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. But like for me, I feel like it's this weird tension where you're like, as a modern dad, you're like trying to. You're trying to work, you're trying to be a really present dad, you're trying to be a good partner for your spouse as well. And then sometimes it almost feels like you're trying to make up for generations of dads being pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Like at the same time, kind of going, no, we can do it all or whatever. But then you kind of start to go, oh man, how do I do this all? And I think that's why, you know, for a lot of dads, it can be a really interesting mental health space because it's like, oh, it does feel like all this pressure. I'm carrying this weight. How do you talk about it? What do you do with it? And so I think for me, having that reset now and then to just go, you know what, Dylan, you're actually just doing your best, and that's okay. And also sometimes, you know, let some things through to the keeper. That'll be all right. You know,
There's a big thing on like that whole present dad thing, and Jim Jeffries done one in his latest thing. Said like, to be a good dad, you've just got to be there. That's it. Like, and everyone would think you're a good dad, but there is that pressure on like you see new dads, you're like, oh, you know, probably not so much now because no one cares, but you know, people used to say like, "Oh, is he going to stick around?" Or you know, he's not doing much with the kids; he's off working all the time. Well, it probably feels like he has to work all the time to be able to bring everything in and provide for the family. Like it's just going to be an ongoing debate forever and ever a day.
It's so complicated. Like I saw this stat that seemed to think that you know, dads of this generation compared to like maybe 2 generations ago are like 60% more involved in the family and the home and stuff. And it's like that's a big change. And how do
we're
you?
doing well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I'm like, that's great, but it is so funny, like you said, because I often have it now and then. Like me and my daughter will go to Macca's because I like it. No, it's a bit of both ways. You know, she loves the hotcakes in the morning. We'll go out for some hotcakes, and it's always so funny because like you'll be there and the old ladies will be there having a cup of $1 cup of coffee or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're such a great dad." But it's because it's just because you're there. You do know what I mean? Like, and it gets me going too because I'm like, man, if my wife was here doing this, everyone would just be like, "Well, she's just doing what she has to do."
They wouldn't even think about it. It wouldn't be a thought.
Like you said with Jim Jeffries, it's like sometimes the bar is so low. Yeah. It's like literally buying a $6 pancakes from McDonald's, and I'm like,
yeah, they wouldn't say anything. They'd probably criticise the mum for being there. Like, couldn't you cook a proper meal for him? And then the dad's like, oh, you know, you're out with the kid. That's so awesome. Like they used to do that to me at the playgroup things, and I was just used to wind me up. I'm like, did you say that? Did you say that to Yaz last week? Like you didn't, did you? You didn't say she's doing a good job. Like, you know. It's fucking annoying. Fires me up. It's not fair.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Dylan. What do you do for, I guess, work? A little bit about your background and I guess what big projects you've got underway.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an actor and a comedian and a filmmaker. That's kind of the easiest way to say it. But kind of like any creative person, you're naturally a bit of a kind of slashy, I guess, in that sense. You're doing a few different things. But no, I grew up like loving comedy and theatre and stuff like that. For a long time, worked with young people. So that's what I did. And then at a certain point, kind of had some of those opportunities, which meant that like kind of acting and writing and stuff has become the main thing that I do, which is really cool. Like I said, I'm a dad. Got a little 2-year-old Lily, which is pretty rad. So that's been super fun. What was the other part of your question? What else? What my background?
Where'd you? I guess you've sort of spoken about what you do as a crust and those kind of things, but like what are the big projects that you've got underway at the moment? If there's anything that you can talk about.
Yeah, no, so totally. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit hard because you can't always talk about everything. But yeah, I'm kind of working on a few different projects at the moment. One was like an animated show, which is having like a premiere thing in France soon, which is pretty rad. Wow. So that's fun. So I got to write on that, which was
What's
rad.
it called?
It's called The Grot, but I can't talk about it too much yet. But, you know, one of those things, you're often working on things that aren't out yet. And that's always that? It's like some fable, you know, the guy's pushing the boulder up the hill, right? Yeah, that's it. Like working in film and TV, it is like that, you know. There's all kinds of different roles, and some people are more like kind of trade-based, working on films, and, you know, they're in the lighting department or whatever. But if you're someone who's trying to like write and perform and do that legit, you are just kind of like haggling your wares all the time, trying to get it made, trying to make it happen. So it's a really kind of weird... It's a weird industry, and I'm just very lucky that my wife does work 9 to 5, and we kind of like have this balance of this understanding, you know, where sometimes it is like, oh, when's Dylan going to get paid? Who knows? But when he does, it'll be pretty good, or, you know, that kind of thing. So you kind of make it work as a bit of a unit.
How do you manage your headspace with that sort of uncertainty?
Yeah, it's really hard. Like, it's interesting. Like, you know, obviously we were talking about like everyone's doing their best. It was probably about like 2 years ago now that I really stopped and gave myself a bit of credit for how hard it is. So working closely with a mate and stuff, we kind of regularly talk about it, and that's kind of part of our kind of process. But for me with acting particularly, I had a moment where I just sat there and I was like, I realised that I'd auditioned for like 30 different projects in the last 2 years and I hadn't got any of them.
Jeez.
And you just go... Like for those who aren't in that world, like imagine doing 30 job interviews, but you're pretending to be someone else. Do you know what I mean? And like, you know that if you get that, your family scenario is going to be different for the next, you know, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Like now and then it's crazy how it works where, you know, last year or maybe the year before there was an audition where it came in. It's like, yep, audition for this. If you get it, you move into New Zealand for 7 months. And it's like, okay. So, you know, like you've got like that, like a second to kind of think about it. I didn't get it, but, you know, it's kind of so weird. So I've definitely found I've had to be like easier on myself and kind of be like, you know, it's okay. There's definitely a hard part of it though, where when you work in a public limelight, the audience or the people that enjoy what you do, they don't necessarily understand how it works, you know? So I can definitely imagine sometimes people, and I have these conversations where people are like, man, we love street racing. When are you doing something else? And it's like, well, you know, what you don't see behind the scenes is that, like, you know, we're trying to write like a half-hour TV show, which, you know, is an achievement in itself. We're trying to get it made, and it's a real challenge. And most of those shows. For it, full send it. So,
how did you get into this industry? Because it's I would dare say a fairly small industry in Tasmania.
Yeah.
How did you find it, and when did you get into it? It was something straight out of school, or something that you found as an adult?
You're just doing blockies when
yeah, this camera guy came out. I was like, yeah, no, I'm definitely in character. Let's keep filming. No, it's I was definitely one of those, like, I was kind of like an anti-theatre kid in the sense of like I did drama and stuff like that, but I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't like obsessed with it in that way. But I just, you know, I always loved performing. You know, age 18 started getting into stand-up and was doing a lot of that, and had always made and produced sketches as a young guy and stuff, and grew up very much in that generation where suddenly you could do that. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that first like bright iMac. Like the colourful one, like I grew up and suddenly my mate had one of those, and it was like, oh man, like video editing is now a thing. Like the first short film I ever made, we had to edit in tape on the camera, and like, so we would film, rewind, do it again, plug it in a TV, but then all of a sudden it like stepped up and we could just like make films and put it on YouTube, and I was like, far out, this is amazing. And so I think just loved that process, did stand up, and then me and my mate Mike just kind of decided, all right, let's do more of it. And then honestly, if it wasn't for Street Racer, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Like, it kind of came together and was a success. Like, we were lucky enough that it was as big as it was. And then off the back of that, got cast in Sando on the ABC. And then off the back of that, got an agent. And then that kind of has kind of spiraled to be more and more opportunities. So it is really one of those things where like it is both hard work, but also like happenstance and luck as well. It's pretty kind of weird. Yeah.
Is it something where you felt like you needed to? So this isn't a reflection so much of like you, but maybe the industry and also other similar industries, which like sport was one.
Yeah.
That sort of has that similar, like you either get taken up or you don't get taken up. And like if you put all of your eggs in one basket, you can kind of be left with nothing. My main point is, what was your backup plan, or didn't you have one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't really have a backup plan, which I think, you can kind of go both ways on. Sometimes it's like, that's good because you're like full tilt, you're in it. But then also sometimes it's kind of is a bit like, oh, what do you do? And like, I'm totally happy to say it. Like my wife and I have conversations about the fact like, if this doesn't pay off, I do have that fear of like, well, what do you do? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's weird if you go, oh, I'm passionate about this, I love doing it. You think you're not too bad at it and you've had some success. It's like, oh, you hope it'll all kind of work out the end and you'll be able to really build it as a successful career. But, you do kind of have to have other thoughts in your mind. So I think it's, the thing I always come back to is it's handy that I talk for a living because I'm like, I'm sure I can do that. As long as I don't randomly become a real estate agent, I think I'll be okay. I've got nothing against real estate agents. Just when sometimes you go, what's me at my worst? And I'm like, it's probably me as like a really wankery real estate agent. Yeah, exactly.
I can imagine you slapping on the top of a car like,
hey, too much. Yeah.
There's a show idea for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, sleazy real estate agent from Tasmania.
Yeah, exactly.
Through like,
be hard to find the inspiration, I think, but no.
Oh, dear. It would. We haven't had a sleazy one on this show.
Good.
Crikey.
Yeah. What else do you do for your mental health? What other things do you do? You've got plenty of time, you sit on the couch just typing away at things every now and then, I assume.
Exactly. I was thinking about this. For me, a big fan of the drive without music, without podcasts, which doesn't sound like inherently like the best thing. I call it serial killer driving, which is concerning, but because I tell people and they look at me like, you're a serial killer. Like, how can you, like, because I drive a lot for work, so I might like drive to Hobart. I live on the northwest in Penguin, and by the time I've got to Devonport, then I might be going, oh, maybe I'll listen to something now, or I hit Lonnie, I'm like, maybe I'll listen to something now, which sounds really weird, but I do it for two reasons. One is to have time to be creative, like in my mind, and to think. Sometimes life can be so noisy that I really appreciate that. But for me, it becomes a really great time, not to overly like over internalize and worry, but to kind of process and kind of ask myself questions about like, how am I feeling? How am I going? So I find that really helpful. That's been something really helpful for me. The other thing has been reading. The last couple of years, like I got a kind of few key hobbies, like, love a video game here and there, love to watch TV, movies. But I've always been a big fan of reading. And what I found was, as much as I love video games, they just hype me up. So I like play it, and then at the end of the night, I'll be getting like frustrated or, like you can't beat a level or something. You're like, oh man, like. But what I've found is that reading for me is the ultimate kind of like reset on life. Like I'll read, and like usually it's just like fiction or, crime or something, like just getting ideas. I mean, no. And for me, that's been a huge one because it's just like, oh, you just take this moment, you breathe. Like it can almost be meditative in a way, like reading in that sense. So for me, that's been a huge thing that I really appreciate. And then the other one would just be journaling. So I'm probably not as like full transparency. I'm probably not as good at the moment as I have been. And I think sometimes that's, becoming a dad, trying to find those like new rhythms of when you do things. But for me, that's been a big one, to really try and actively go, okay, how am I feeling? And I do specifically do it if there's like an issue or a challenge that I'm trying to kind of work through in my life, or something that I really feel affecting me. I will get on there and do that. And then talking to people, there's a few really trusted mates that I will talk to about pretty much everything. And I had one of those the other day where I sat down and had a really great chat with a mate, and I had to specifically make myself do it. Not because I didn't think he'd be up for it or he wouldn't be accepting or whatever, but just, you know, some days you're like, I can't be bothered talking about what's hard or whatever. But then that was so helpful. Like, it was amazing how much, and all he did was listen, you know, like, which is such a skill to do. And, you know, anyone who's got a partner, you know, like, it's so hard to learn to just listen and not talk. But, you know,
Yeah. Do you want
Particularly as
some
blokes that just want to fix everyone's problems.
absolutely.
solutions or
you know.
just an ear?
Yeah, exactly. You know, to just, I feel like, you know, I've been married 10 years. It's taken me 10 years just to shut up. You know, so yeah. So for me, those friendships and those relationships and having those conversations with my wife as well is a massive one for my mental health.
We've spoken about so much around, I guess, your background and your sort of touch points there. I think that's honestly probably where we can finish her off, I think.
Yeah,
Unless
sounds
there's
good.
anything else that you would like to add, I think it's been a really good podcast and I think a lot of people will get heaps out of it.
Oh, cool.
So I thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you if they're looking to try and follow your journey and what you've got on?
Yeah, sure. So you can stalk me. I'll give out my address. No. Now, the best thing if people want to kind of check out the stuff we're doing or Street Race or any of the stuff we've made, we've got a new comedy documentary coming out kind of in the coming weeks, months about loneliness, which is pretty fun. I'll have to send it to you guys. I think you'll get a kick out of it. So just dylanhesp.com. Check me out on YouTube. Look, I've kind of taken a break from like Facebook and Instagram just because I just felt like I didn't need that in my life. But if you want to see the work I've done for like whether it's for the ABC or just online, YouTube and the website, best place to go.
Perfect.
Yeah, sweet.
Thanks, mate. If there's been anything that's been triggering out of this episode, we do recommend chatting to a mate or to a GP, or at the very least 13, 11, 14 will get you through to Lifeline. But thank you. We hope you've got something out of this. Cheers, Dylan. Thanks.
Thanks. Dylan. Cheers.
Thanks, Dylan.